forward and say again, good morning. This is our fourth Communities of Practice. So we're going to get started over here. Can everybody see my screen okay? Think? All right. So with that, let's talk about our agenda today, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. We're going to do that around the state data acquisition calendar and take a look at what's due still this month and get an idea of what's due next month. All right, then we're going to do a program overview with ESSER, so that's going to be exciting. They're going to talk about some of the hot topic items, things that are important to have on your radar as well. We're going to do our professional development in 15 or 15-ish, as I like to call it. Today, we're going to do a little bit on EDGAR. So if you don't know what that is, we're going to do a high-level overview of EDGAR, just kind of how to navigate it and what it is. We're going to do tips and tricks. We're going to look at maintenance of efforts, SPED versus federal programs, because there's been some confusion in the past. We don't want anybody to be caught off guard. We want to make sure that everybody knows what the differences are. Then we're going to look at a federal funds and food presentation, which is something I'm really excited to present to you guys to hopefully help you all understand the differences so that everybody makes sure that they don't fall under that scenario when perhaps somebody thinks they can spend the money and then they can't. All right, then we're going to go into some discussion time. We'll talk about some future agendas. Okay, so what's left on the radar for January? Really, we're here at the 17th, so we're below this blue line here. So just a couple things left, but take a look at the other items. If you haven't done them, you might need to reach out to the SDE contact and say, oh, shoot, I forgot to do my funding cap appeal. Something I wanted to also bring to your attention here is if you look at this required by second to last on the right of the columns, it gives us kind of a reference point, like why is the State Department asking for this stuff? Well, the very first one here, you notice that it says it's about government performance, GPRA, EDGAR. All these things are federal laws for the most part. There's a couple this month that were state, and those are important to know why as well. So really, by the end of this month, if you're a charter, for instance, we give you a little bit longer to finalize your application for funds for IDEA for special ed. So that's due the 25th. If you're a charter and you haven't finished up, give me a holler so we can make sure that you can retro backdate your spending to July 1st. That's why we have those due dates. And then the last one here on this list is the general supervision file review. So that's kind of like program monitoring for special ed files. So if you don't know what that is, reach out. It's very important. They need to have files uploaded so they can start those reviews. Okay, moving on to February. It's going to be here before we know it. Again, look at the required by column. Look at all these federal laws that are like, yep, we got to do this, we got to do that. But it looks like we have some migrant ed information coming through. So make sure that you contact those SDE contacts if you don't know what that is. Lots of things going on. Gear Up looks like it's a couple different dates there. And then again, another MSIS migrant student reporting the information by the end of the month. So Sarah Seamont is going to be busy. So make sure you reach out early if you need help with something. So again, the reason we put these up here for you is A, to help you not forget, but B, to really take a look and just kind of jog your memory, like, do I have a process for this? Do I know who's in my district or charter in charge of this? Because you never want to have it be, well, I thought Susie was doing it. These are important things. You don't ever want your funds frozen or to be non-compliant in something, because nobody wants a superintendent knocking on their door if they get a call saying, hey, we forgot to turn in our student safety evaluation. Okay, so that's what this is about. And then those federal laws, we're going to talk about some of that today so that you guys understand what those are and how to navigate those. But with that, let's do a quick refresher from December. December was busy. A lot of you guys may not have made the meeting, and that's okay. We record these and post the content, but it was a lot of good information. We talked about cybersecurity and ransomware, and this is a hot topic all over the country. So I had some good articles to read and just reminders for everybody to bring up with your board or your administrative executive teams, just to say, hey, we really need to look at this, make sure we know we have our ducks in a row and we're protected. Then we did kind of a navigation on GRA for some of those folks that are new and they may not know some of the tips and tricks and ways to navigate. And then we did, again, my PD in 15-ish. We went over GEPA, the 427 statements that you guys have to do in your federal program, CFSGA. And it's a requirement under the IDEA application as well. We make you check off and certify that you made your statement over in the CFSGA. Because again, it's something that you have to have in place. It's a federal regulation. Then we had a program highlight on McKinney-Vento, and lots of information there that was really relevant for a lot of folks that maybe just didn't know on the high level I know it's some money that goes towards, homeless student, this or that, but if you didn't really know what it was about, it was a great presentation. Okay, and with that, we're going to jump right into all things ESSER. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to give the controls over to Lisa English. So here we go. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thank you, thank you. Let me pull up my presentation here. Bear with me. Okay. Okay, can you guys see that okay? Good, okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Lisa, thank you for allowing us a few minutes today. We really appreciate it. For those of you who do not know me, I am Lisa English. I'm the Pandemic Relief Funds Coordinator in federal programs. With me today is Katie Watkins and Aaron Kennedy, and they are part of the ESSER team as well. This morning, we're going to just touch on a couple of hot topics that we've been noticing. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. Otherwise, feel free to email us. I know we're kind of short on time today. So here we go. So CARES ESSER 1, as you all should know, our first ESSER fund closed last month. For CARES ESSER 1, Idaho was allocated almost $48 million in 3 separate areas: flow through, learning management systems, and social emotional learning. When we closed these grants, we had about $109,000 remaining. Because we would prefer not to have, we would prefer to have a zero balance and not have to return any funds to the U.S. Department of Treasury. We are opening the CARES ESSER 1 LMS and SEL grants back open, hopefully tomorrow, until about 5 p.m. on Monday, January 23rd. If you have had expenses prior to the 9/30/22 obligation deadline that you use general funds or other ESSER funds for, that these funds can be used for, please make sure you go back and exhaust these funds first. We know that some of you have dollars left, some of you have, under $100. We would really like to exhaust these funds prior to sending them back.
Hey, Lisa, real quick, can you make sure your slides are moving? We're still just seeing that front ESSER hot topics.
Yeah, that's really weird. Hold on just a second.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Oh, okay, hold on. Whew. Too many pieces. I apologize. Hold on just a second. Sorry.
That works. We can go that way.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on.
Now it's not shared at all. So, oh, there we go. Yep.
That's
Great.
fine. You all can see it. That's the important part.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So if you have CARES money left and you are already using SRSA funds, you should have finished drawing down the ESSER funds first. The same is true for LMS. You can use these funds for LMS systems, LMS professional development, devices for students or staff, connectivity, SPED assistive technology. SEL funds can be used for any social or emotional activity, such as anti-bullying, suicide prevention, Title IX training, SEL curriculum, SEL professional development, counselors, behavioral health services. We just want to make sure that these funds are zeroed out by the 23rd. We really, really don't want to have to send any money back to the US Treasury. Okay. So just a quick reminder that even though the deadlines for CSRSA and ARP feel like they're still a ways away, the end dates are going to be creeping up here before you know it. So if you're working on any projects like renovation, keep these obligation and liquidation dates in mind. Okay. This year we've begun to monitor ESSER funds. One of the areas that we have found that the LEAs need to be aware of is inventory. Inventory records must be maintained on tangible property purchased with federal funds, such as laptops or tablets. Inventory must have a description of the property, a serial number or other identification number, the source of the funding for the property, who holds the title, the acquisition date, the cost of the property, the location and who has the property. So if a teacher has a laptop, you need to make sure it's with Mrs. Johnson, or if it's with a student, you need to make sure it's with little Timmy and it's noted on the inventory sheet. There is an inventory template on the ESSER monitoring page as well as the federal programs monitoring page. Please make sure that you guys are keeping an inventory of that stuff bought with federal funds. It's very important. Allowable use of funds. So ESSER funds are not only to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID or any other pandemic or occurrence yet to happen. So just keep in mind, if something else were to happen, is your district prepared to go fully online again? Something to that effect.
Good. I know I didn't sleep at all last night.
Okay. But it also needs to be necessary expense for a reasonable amount and allocable. Beyond that, there are other factors that we need to consider when requesting funds. Is it allowable under the ESSER 20 uses of funds, which can be found on our pandemic relief funds page? It's very important to remember that number 20, which is other activities necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of services, is not a catch-all or a free-for-all. You still have to take into consideration the uniform grant guidance, the general administrative regulations. The federal programs allowable use of federal funds guide is another great resource, and that can be found on our website under federal programs, under funding and fiscal accountability. So just make sure that just because it may be allowable doesn't mean it is allowable. So make sure you're watching those use of funds. We all know that there is a huge plethora of allowable use of funds. This list is not exhaustive in any means, but if you have questions on allowability, please feel free to reach out. These funds are for connectivity, laptops, updating the air system in the schools, after school tutoring, before school tutoring, Friday schools, Saturday school, summer school, mental health services, extra paraprofessionals to break up classrooms, sanitation. Just remember that this list, there's so many things you can do with it, but there are some that are not allowable. Sadly, we have seen some items that are not allowable in the GRA as well as while monitoring. We understand that the thoughts and reasoning behind some of these purchases, such as team building, teacher appreciation, or student inclusion, unfortunately, they're not allowable. So field trips for entertainment purposes, including like amusement parks, social activities like trips to Wahoo's, bowling, the movies. Some of these aren't allowable uses of federal funds. Goods or services for personal use. So office decor, school sweatshirts, t-shirts, water bottles, gift baskets, that kind of thing. They can't be purchased with federal funds. Ceremonies, banquets, celebration expenditures, including staff holiday parties, retirement parties. those cannot be paid for with federal funds. Gift cards, tickets to movies, tickets to sporting events for students or staff, again, not allowable. Meeting or event decor, flowers, balloons, Christmas decorations, Halloween decorations, those are not allowable use of funds. Team dinners, renting food trucks, really most food is not allowable. We'll discuss this again in another slide or two. Just remember, we understand that mental health is a huge part of what we're going through right now, but this stuff is not allowable for use of funds. We should be getting counselors and EPA or EAP and things like that, as opposed to lunches and dinners for staff. So just please keep those in mind. Now, however, the above items can be donated by, say, the PTA or something like that. For instance, you can do the gifts, you can do souvenirs, but you can't pay for them with school funds, with federal funds. They can be donated from companies, businesses, whatever it may be, but they cannot be purchased with federal funds. Now, generally, there's a very high burden of proof to show that paying for food and beverages with federal funds, including title funds, is necessary to meet the goals and objectives of a federal grant. When a grantee is hosting a meeting, the grantee should structure the agenda for the meeting so that there's time for participants to purchase their own food, beverages, and snacks. In addition, when planning a meeting, grantees may want to consider a location which participants have easy access to food and beverages. While these determinations will be made on a case-by-case basis, and there may be some circumstances where the cost would be permissible, it is likely that those circumstances would be rare. Grantees, therefore, will have to make a compelling case that the unique circumstances they have identified would justify these costs as reasonable and necessary. So is a working lunch necessary? The information must be critical to the agenda. The agenda must state it's a working lunch. Is the lunch portion of the agenda a critical, substantive discussion? Is there a genuine time constraint to get lunch due to a topic-packed agenda prohibiting time? In very rare cases, are there no meal places within a couple of hours access? Is the lunch cost reasonable? Has the local education agency carefully documented that it's reasonable and necessary? Yeah, we understand some of these circumstances. We understand the need for some of these items. However, it's a very big burden to show that the food purchased with federal funds was needed and necessary and reasonable. So please make sure you're paying attention to those. Just finally, our website, we are in the process of updating information on our pandemic relief fund section of our website. Please make sure you're using the site, as well as the ESSER monitoring site. There are great resources to help you out with most questions you have. Please remember, we are just an email or a phone call away if you have any questions. We're here to help. Please let us know, what the issues are. If you need some technical assistance, if you need, if you're new and need help answering questions, please let us know. I mean, we're here to figure out whatever needs to be done. But other than that, Lisa, that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa English. There's lots of Lisas here at the State Department, and sometimes that's confusing, but just know that whenever I get something for Lisa English, I share it right back with her and vice versa. So
Absolutely.
There's always a Lisa available. Okay, so back to our next section. And Lisa, thank you for that content. It's perfect for what we're going to talk about here in the next couple of slides. So we're going to talk about Edgar. What is Edgar? I hear this from some new program and new fiscal folks sometimes. Well, why do I have to do these things? Well, and our excuse is always because the feds make us. But that's where Edgar comes in. So the Education Department of General Administrative Regulations, or EDGAR, those are our federal regulations that govern and control our lives, so to speak, here at the State Department here, because it's what the federal U.S. Department tells us we can and cannot do. So it's basically the USAID's unofficial compilation of administrative requirements for grants. And there's lots of grants and lots of varying pieces for each grant program. But these regulations impact your time and effort certifications, your indirect cost reimbursement allowability, time obligation of funds, carryover, just general financial management rules, program income, if you have any, record retention, property, equipment like Lisa was talking about, supplies and inventory controls. You're going to have everything about procurement, the cans and can'ts, monitoring conflicts of interest, travel, basically everything. And all recipients of federal grant dollars have had to comply with these new regulations that fall under EDGAR as of 2015. So it's been there for a while now, so we can't really say, oh, I didn't know about that. So just want to make sure we all know. Now, the authority falls under GEPA, which we talked a little bit about last month, and under the general authority of the Secretary. So here's where you can look to reference if you want to see how they adopted these regulations and who gave who control. All right, but let's talk again about the purpose. Really, EDGAR's purpose is to strengthen oversight of federal funds. They want to reduce risk of waste, fraud, and abuse. We want to make sure that there is guidance for auditors so that they know what to look for. They want to know that you have the right policies in place to protect yourself and to have these effective internal controls and separation of duties and things like that, again, to avoid fraud and waste. Now, grantees also have to have lots of written procedures. That's one of the things you'll know if you've been monitored for anything, that's one of the things we look for. And then you see all these little codes like 200.302B7. Those are the pieces that talk specific to whatever item it is we're looking at. But really, like Lisa was saying earlier, all the costs have to be documented and they need to be reasonable, necessary, allocable, and allowable. And so we're going to get into that a little bit more. So I want to give just kind of, again, an overview of EDGAR. I could do a 2-hour training on EDGAR, and we may do that at some point. But what we want to start with is, hey, what is it? How do we navigate it? So again, these are rules, administrative rules that help us know what we can and can't do with federal funds. I've highlighted 3 here. These are all the different sections, by the way, and there'll be links to all of these. These are all links when I get the presentation posted. But I wanted to start about direct programs and really number 76, part 76. Those are our state administrative programs. So all your title funds, IDEA special ed, 21st century, Perkins, CTE, adult ed, all these federal funds fall here. And these are where all the guidance is given to the states to help to run these programs and make sure that everybody in our districts and our charters are using the funds correctly. And then again, you see our friend GEPA down there at part 81, and there's lots of other enforcement acts there that tells the states, hey, if somebody's not doing something, what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? What do you have to, as a state, do about it? So again, we don't make up these rules. These are the rules that they have in place for us. There's lots of money available to us, but we want to be able to use them for their intent, the correct intent. So part 76, these state administrative programs, if you go to the program, it'll look, the links that I'll have shared, it'll look kind of like old font over to the right there where I kind of took a little snippet, and it shows you all of the different sections. It talks you through everything that you need to know. But there's some newer formatting that's easier than that to navigate. But I wanted to talk about what's in there. Well, it talks about the different covered programs and how you can become eligible for those programs, those different grant funds. Then it talks about allowability. Allowability is huge. That's where all the cost principles and allowable use of funds. How do you deal with acquisition of property and construction? What about our indirect cost rates? Are there limits? There are limits on specific grants that say, no, I don't care if your indirect is 10%, you can only take a maximum of 7, for instance. There's compliance with state statutes and regulations, hierarchies, and fiscal control. Anything, including fund accounting requirements, but all these different fiscal controls, including separation of duties and so on. Then there's a whole nother section in there about timely obligations and reporting, talks about the period of availability and carryover. How do we do closeout? When can we not do things for closeout? And like, have I received the inventory and things like that, or what I ordered? And then it talks about our sub-grantee reporting requirements and record keeping. And you know that we check for those when we do monitoring. Now, I mentioned there's a little bit nicer format. When you go to the link down here at the bottom, this is what it will look like on the eCFR sites. Over to the right would be the table of contents, for instance, for Part 76. And all those blue pieces are other pieces that open up to something like on the left. But it will show you all the details within it. So if you are interested in understanding something about obligation periods or whatnot, you'll be able to find it in here. So again, I just want people to understand that you don't have to have an Edgar book. It's all online here so that you guys can go just double check, is that allowable? And you don't have to know all of this inside and out, but you do need to have a general understanding and know where you can check for it. All right, so another thing that Lisa had mentioned earlier was Uniform Grant Guidance, or UGG, and that's our friend 2 CFR 200. So that's where the uniform administrative requirements for all programs lie. It talks a lot about cost principles there and the audit requirements for federal awards. So within it, there's all these subparts. There's always a subpart or a subpart. But anyway, I wanted you to understand kind of there's definitions, general provisions, pre-award, post-award. Subpart E is our friend cost principles, and subpart F are the two main ones that we deal with the most, because it's how we help you guys administer those grants to make sure that you guys are spending appropriately. So I wanted to show you, again, when you go in there, this is some of the subparts. If you go to the link down below, you'll be able to look at all the different uniform grant requirements under all of these subparts, and those little gray arrows will open up and show you all the different subparts, dot this and that. So 200.100 section, but there is a lot of content here that you can search by too. It's a great site. But part E, like I said, is the one that's really the one that we're always in. And I have this picture of this guy in a superhero cape. That's you guys trying to do all these things, okay? Look at all the things you have to do just under section 200.403 alone, which is the basic factors of allowability, not the specifics of the program even, but just basic. So I want to make sure everybody understands that, hey, they have to be reasonable, necessary, allocable. They've got to be, complying with the principles of that specific award, the cost principles. They've got to be very consistent with your policies and procedures. You've got to treat it as a direct or an indirect cost. You've got to know the difference there. And we are going to do a communities of practice about that. And then you got to make sure it still falls under GAAP, right? So you guys are accountants, or you should know a lot about accounting. So you need to know what's allowable under general accounting principles. And then you can't use it as a cost sharing for federal programs, right? We know that federal is federal. It can't be counted towards something else for match. You got to accurately document it, and it has to be in the right budget period, right? You can't say, oh, I bought this 3 years ago, I'm going to use this year's money. Okay, that was a lot. We will do more trainings on that, but I want to give you a break here. Let's do a little tips and tricks. So we were talking about universal principles just a minute ago, and some of the things that have to happen under all federal stuff, but there are very specific pieces that may vary from grant program to grant program. So one that I get questioned about a lot is maintenance of effort, or known as MOE. Now on the left side, I have some of the specifics on special ed, and then the other federal programs on the right. So the first biggest thing that I want everyone to understand is, what is maintenance of effort again? It is what you guys spend out of your general funds to support and sustain. And this on the left, I'm saying special ed, but on the right, we would say the same thing to support these other federal programs. So the feds want to know you're spending your own general funds first before you spend supplemental federal funds. So on the left side, Special ed is very specific where it says you have to spend 100% or more of what you did in prior years out of general fund before you use IDEA grants, okay? On the right side, we say, oh, they have a little bit different threshold in the federal programs world where you have to spend at least 90%. Now, again, a difference is to get special education funding, you have to prove your MOE to me in the application for funding, or I won't give you I can't give you the new funding. And then the difference is on federal program side, they do an internal review, and if you don't meet it, then they're going to reduce your allocations. But on my side for special ed, you won't even qualify for the funding until you pay me back. So we don't reduce your new grants, we require that you pay us in a check. So nobody wants to go to the superintendent and say, oh, I need a check for $150,000 or we're not going to get any of our money because we overspent last year. So super important. Can't emphasize that enough. Now, a little difference too, in the spring, I do over here in the IDEA grants, I do a audit and I look at what did you guys report in iFarms and what did you say you reported in my application. And if I can't match them up, I'm going to give you a call because I've got to certify that you truly did spend that. So when you do my application, you get to tell me what it was, but it could have changed by the time you had your audit and things got moved around. So I always give you guys the benefit of the doubt, and I know federal programs does too, because they do the same internal audit, only they do it on their funds. And they're going to make sure that you guys met it. And then there's other certain things you can apply for some exceptions on my side for special ed if you had very specific drops in child count and lost staffing, things like that. And then the same thing goes for federal programs. They have very specific things that you can ask for waivers. They have their own set of rules and regs. So really here at the bottom, I just want to have you guys understand that what we look at, what's compared, what are we comparing to? Well, we always look at what happened the previous years. So we're going to look back the second year. We have to make sure that this last 12-month period certified you for your new funding. So just a good one to maybe print out and stick on your wall if you need to remember, hey, that's right, I got to be at 100% threshold on this one, but only 90% over here. You don't have to do it in a grant application the same way, but you got to kind of be able to understand that you are at least meeting or exceeding those thresholds. And let's face it, you guys, we don't give you enough federal funds to run the whole program. We know you're spending general funds. But with all the new federal funds that had come in from the pandemic, we got to make sure you guys aren't supplanting, right? You guys still have to meet those level of effort. You can't be offsetting stuff you were already doing. The whole purpose of those extra supplemental funds was to do something else extra. Okay. I've been really excited and putting this together for you guys because as Lisa English mentioned earlier, there are super strict rules around federal funds. And she hit a lot of really good points about that, about how it has to be super necessary. So I am going to try and break these segments up when I post them this next round so that you guys can go straight to the rules and regs on foods. We'll post the whole enchilada if you guys want to go back and watch the whole thing, but I'm going to try and break these out so you guys can reference them separately. But let's talk about Food Regs 101. We know that navigating all the allowable uses, like that other slide showed at the guy in the wind and his cape blowing, that this can be really tricky. It's like a maze if you don't know the rules. Well, we're going to try and help you today so you guys get a better understanding. Okay, so again, back to 2 CFR 200. That's where we learn the rules. That's where the rules lie. That's where they're all outlined for us. And it tells us that anyone that is responsible for spending the federal grants, they have to be able to determine allowability. So you need to be familiar with the Part 200. Okay, that's where all the details are. If you don't have a book or reference guide or something, really need to get familiar with it and at least look at some of that content online. So you've got to follow all these rules. You've got to check the cost to see if it's something that's allowable for the allowable use of funds, and you've got to check that program specific. So not just the general administrative rules, but does it fall under something that's allowable under title versus special ed, for instance? And you guys have to make sure that your staff whoever's doing the spending, whether it's a special ed secretary or title person that's doing the purchasing, make sure they know what they can and can't do. Set up a cheat sheet and say, never do this out of this fund, do it over here instead, so that they know in case they're not able to come to these types of trainings. So some scenarios, we know there's professional development and conferences that you guys go to, right? I'm not saying that if you went to an applicable conference that you couldn't have per diem, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. But we want to make sure that, you know, if there's a program related meeting, did you need food? Sometimes you do, and it's a normality under perhaps like parent engagement meetings. So that's something to think about. Now, breaking down rules and regs, let's talk about that. Lisa mentioned this earlier. This is under, again, our 2 CFR 200. And what the feds have said is that, hey, there's a lot of things that a lot of criteria you have to meet if you're going to be able to use this money for food. So really, is it fundamental to the project? Is it crucial? Is it necessary? Can we not carry out the scope of work without it? And it has to be very specifically approved by your fiscal accountability office. So your program director or coordinator over here at the State Department, before you go buying pizza, for instance, for like she said, for a mental health, you know, hey, all the teachers need some pizza today or they're not going to make it. Well, then probably use your general funds for that. Okay. So really, these are the regulations, has to fit into a direct cost category or one of these other circumstances. And it has to certify under both criteria. Now, let's talk about the allowability. So how do we understand? It's really confusing. It's like this picture of these flow charts. Well, how and when can I do it? Well, it has to be allowable under uniform grant guidance. It has to fit the term of the specific award. It has to fit the sponsor policy and or it has to fit under IDAPA. So don't forget about IDAPA state rules, okay? Now, let's again get back to, is it reasonable? Is it necessary? And is it allocable? Does it fit the program? So all of these uniform guidance down here, all these 2 CFR 200s, that's where it gets into those three, the reasonable, necessary, and allowable. So something worth reading. And again, you can't conflict with your applicable state statutes. Okay. Now that 200-403, this is the one that talks about the allowability, that it's necessary and reasonable. And is it consistent? Is it consistent with the other activities that you do as a, you know, that are non-federal? So in other words, you can't say, I'm going to use the federal funds so we can have twice as nice of a luncheon for this professional development than this other one that we'll only spend half the cost for. So again, these are things that are very specific. So make sure that you're adhering to these. Continuing on, it has to be consistent treatment, like I was just saying. Has to be, you know, you can't just say, oh, I have way more money in title, so we'll just spend more money over there. And it has to be under GAAP, this generally accepted accounting principles. Okay, so again, think about that and what the rules are that maybe your board has set in addition to these. And it can't be as anything that's a cost sharing or matching. So that's something to remember as well. And then to be adequately documented. So that's again, when you guys need to go back and make sure that you've got state approval from somebody over at the State Department, and that it was incurred in the right period of time and the right award period. Now, there's a lot more details. This comes straight out of those CFRs, and I just wanted to give you an idea of what the reading looks like. But again, they go into detail and they say, hey, it's only reasonable if it doesn't exceed what would be incurred on a prudent person, right? That it's definitely necessary for the operation of the award or to have proficient or efficient performance. Again, that it's a reasonable market price for a comparable good. You didn't go buy the most expensive something. And this just goes in order, not just for food, but just in general for reasonable costs. And then again, you acted with prudence. So, you know, it needs to make sense. It wasn't something that you didn't need, in other words. And all this content is here for you guys to read, but I just want to make sure we have time for discussion at the end. And then food for grant related conferences, right? So sometimes we know that you guys have to have some gatherings, and we have a link here in this presentation under the frequently asked questions about using federal funds for your meetings and your conferences. So you guys have to decide if you're going to have a regional or whatever type of meeting, and discuss and consider if it's definitely necessary. If you've got to have this meeting and it's in the middle of nowhere, like Lisa said, there's nothing for a couple hours and you need to make sure you've brought in sandwiches or something, it can meet the goals that you need to get through this training to certify people. You just need to make sure you have your ducks in a row. You have to make sure that you even needed that face-to-face meeting, or maybe you could have done it as a webinar. So think about the different things. It has to be necessary and reasonable. And we will work with you. If you don't know, call us, like Lisa said earlier. Call us because we will help you understand if it is or it isn't. Now, here's some more details under dot 432. And has to be reasonable and successful for the performance, not just does it fit, but does it fit for the performance? So perhaps you need to pay with some non-federal foods for parts of it instead, like speaker fees and those types of things may be allowable. Maybe you could offset the cost of food and refreshments with some other funds. So make sure that if you're going to have these conferences and you're hosting them, or you're putting them on as even a regional meeting, that that they fit the terms and conditions of your federal award. Okay, and this here defines what they consider a conference is: a meeting, a retreat, seminar, symposium, workshop, or any event whose primary purpose is the dissemination of technical information. Okay, and so that would deem it necessary. Okay, now she mentioned earlier as well, there's this is to quote the feds, right? The very high burden of proof to say that you can spend money on food and beverages and that it is necessary to meeting the goals. So it's almost like you're on the defense stand here trying to say why you had to do something. But, you know, we're not going to hound you that way. We're going to work with you. It might be necessary. So these are the questions to ask you. Is it necessary? Is it on your agenda? Did it talk about how it was a working lunch? Somebody who's maybe presenting while you guys were eating to just get through everything, all the content. So these are the pieces that you could ask for before, that you could consider before you guys go on with that. Okay, red flags. Well, this is something that, again, this is a red flag if you've got food under a federal fund, and the auditors look for this. They are told to look for this under those federal guidance objectives that they are given. So, you know, they're going to ask these questions too. Well, show me the agenda. Could they have had a longer break so you could go get your own lunch? Hey, this was only a 4-hour meeting. Why did you schedule it right over the lunch hour? You should have just let everybody go to lunch. So they're going to look for those too, but it is going to draw attention, and auditors know that you guys sometimes spend out of consumables, for instance. And so they know where to look, and they're going to, because it's their job. All right. Specific program restrictions. Again, to be allowable, you've got to look at your program statutes. So think about that. Title I is a little bit different from IDEA, and just make sure that you look at the accompanying program regulations. Look at all the pieces that say something is allowable or not. This means, like, for instance, if the funds could benefit the appropriate population of students that they're allocated for. So think about that. You know, did you use Title III money for something that is allowable to spend on something else, or is it only allowable to spend on English language learners, right? You can't just buy it for everybody. So think about what is the targeted purpose of the money, and are you spending it on the right group? So don't have that look on the cat's face. We want to make sure that you guys understand who is encompassed under each of the programs, okay? Now, sometimes food is allowed, right? Sometimes, like Title I-A, sometimes they'll have a light refreshment at a parent meeting. So sometimes it's allowable. And I bet you anything that it's got to be still approved by the State Department or something that they have listed. And it still has to be reasonable and necessary, okay? You can't put on a big steak dinner, but you might be able to have some sort of refreshments or something, okay? So it has to, again, there has to be a connection to the programmatic purpose. It still has to be considered reasonable. And these are some of the words specific from these programs. Okay, so you might be allowed to do that under some of these programs, but check with the state coordinator, check to make sure that it still fits within what your district guidelines are, so that you make sure that it's considered reasonable and approved before you do so. Now, ESSER and GEAR had very specific regulations as well that, wasn't really the main use of funds that was intended, but there were some flexibilities about meal packaging and other uses that might be tied to foods. But I believe those only were extended through 2022. So just double check the timelines on those, because sometimes they'll make a flexibility on an award, but it was only for this one period of time. So that's something to check. Now, IDEA, this is my world in special education. These use of funds are audited super strictly, okay, very closely. Food purchases, candy, snacks, not allowable with federal funds. Now, I've had a lot of things lately coming up. Well, hey, we're putting together something on a specific IEP goal. We're going to address fine motor skills like picking up a Cheerio. But what the feds would much rather you do is have them pick up a cotton ball. It doesn't have to be something that they eat, because it has to be specific to the kid and the IEP goal. It can't be like classroom wide. So these are important things to consider. And again, you'd have to have approval from the State Department prior to making this a part of spending the federal grant. Could you do that with your other funds that are non-federal? Absolutely. But I know, for instance, that I don't even fund you guys 20% of your cost for special ed. So that's a lot more money that you could throw towards salaries in the federal grants, just something is allowable. Just be safe. But that might mean that you need to have that conversation with your business office if you're the program director. So business offices, consider that. If you don't have a line item for them to spend out of general funds for maintenance of effort, for instance, and they need for supplies and things, consider just putting the funding of the federal grants towards the salaries and things are allowable, and give them another line item out of a non-federal funding source. So again, at the bottom, I have this very specific language that with IEP goals, there's all these indicators or specifics that you have to be addressing. So make sure that you think about that when you are, putting together an IEP. If you think it's necessary, it's the only way to motivate this kid, great. But let's make sure that you have it dialed in and tied to a specific indicator. And business office folks, I don't expect you to know what that means. That is the SPED director world. So let's go back to allowable, unallowable. I want to make sure you guys have a way to look back and forth. How do you determine if it's allowable? I always stop about, hey, can I carry out the scope of work without it? Yes or no? If not, then stop. It's not really allowable. If it is, go on to step 2. And hey, we can't get through this meeting because it's a 6-hour meeting unless we have a break and some some food. So think about those things. If not, don't charge it to the federal award. You could do it to some other unrestricted fund source from a professional development account or something. So again, think about all these other things. If it is allowable, you still have to be in accordance with UGG, the Uniform Grant Guidance, and all other states and district level policies. All right, so we're almost done here. Guys, is it allowable? Would this party be allowable with federal funds? It looks like fun. Maybe it was something like an incentive. They were earning it. Sadly, most of the time, no. Really, this is where, again, use federal funds for something that's safer, like the staffing costs that you have to pay anyway. Think about using other funds or donated funds for parties and things. And what about a mental health celebration for the adults? Hey, we made it through the school year. We've got $500 left in our supply funds. Let's throw a party. Absolutely not. Sorry. I know you want to. It looks like fun, but it's not allowable. How about office parties? Again, just office parties in-house. Hey, after work, it's Christmas break, yahoo. Nope, sorry, can't use it, can't use it. I wanted to give you some examples real briefly, and I won't read through these, but a couple years back, 2010, there was a big deal, it was in the news. General Services Administration held a big biennial conference. They had 300 attendees out in Vegas, and boy, did they party. Just the costs for the planning meetings and food and beverage was over 820,000. It made the headlines in the nightly news. What did they spend it on? They spent a lot of it on catering, travel, and vendors. So this was insane. Again, I want to leave a little time to talk, but I want to show you how much money they spent on food. And really what it comes down to when they look at reasonable and necessary at a conference, hey, your per diem is not $122 a person. At this time, it was only $66 a day. So they spent twice the allowable amount. And I showed you some of the breakdowns, but they spent $7,000 on sushi rolls and $2,800 on a cheese display. I don't think that that was necessary and reasonable. So the feds do look at these things, and the Office of Inspector General, OIG, gave a big findings report, and I'll have links in case you guys want to read and just go, oh, geez. But this is why they scrutinize. This is some of the reasons they put together the Edgar and other pieces, is because they forced some resignations. There were lots of consequences. They had to reduce travel budgets. They had to put the CFOs in charge of things, mandatory trainings for everybody every year. So it was a mess. So I have here a picture of the guys partying. Notice there's no food in their picture. All these things are a reminder to us to make sure that we are using things properly. The funding sources. So I've got lots of links in here for you guys to read up on. Real quick, I want to make sure that you guys know that I'm still looking for some presenters. I want you guys to help. Next month in February, we want to start looking at the federal funding cliff and getting ready for budgets, because by March, you guys are doing budgets. You're doing budgets now. So we want to look at some board presentation tips. Some of us are not as comfortable at presenting. So what are some things that help you? And these are some other topics. I've already got some people lined up for indirect and other items, but these are some things I would love some help for you guys to help present on. And then I've updated our schedule just a little, and I'll post this on our site. So just to give you some ideas of some of the programs we're looking at in the near future, it'll be subject to change. We'll probably have to keep updating it, but I'll share that with you guys. And there's another link here if you want to share it with others. So I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to open it up for questions, comments, requests, anything like that. We're just a call away, and I've got all of our content contacts for you as well. But before that, I just wanted to see if we had any other questions in the chat. And I see that Lisa and those guys have been great at answering questions about ESSER. But does anybody else have any questions, comments? I'd really like to learn this. If you don't want to say it on the chat or out loud, you can email me, but I want to leave some time. How do you guys feel about the federal funds? Is this surprising to you with the food? Do you guys feel like you should clean up some things that maybe you've done this year and say, oh yeah, let's just move staffing, it's safer? Or maybe this will help you as a something to talk about when you get into budgeting, because maybe you guys will shift some things around. But I just want to leave that open. Everybody has the ability to unmute if they want to. Does anybody have anything that's just, gosh, I really got to ask? I want to leave a few minutes. Come on now, don't be shy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. With regard to food and SPED money, how does a life skills cooking class work into that? That's a great question, Austin. Thanks for asking it. So that is an allowable use, okay? Because that fits the goals of their IEPs. It fits the goals of the program where they're teaching a skill to this group of students. So that is allowable. It is part of the scope of work of that grant to teach these skills. So that is a perfect use of funds where they can buy the supplies to teach them how to make pancakes and things. That is definitely allowable. Now, making sure that everybody has, snacks every day, that's different, because that's not completely necessary. And the other thing to think about too, you guys, is would this exist without these federal funds, right? yes, you guys will be getting an electronic copy of today's presentation. So I just have to merge Lisa's presentation into mine. And the thing here at the State Department is we have to have everything be accessible. So if you guys prefer a PowerPoint, I can send that one out probably today, and then I'll post the PDF versions as well once we get them accessible and posted. But definitely. Let's see, a couple other people asking questions. What are we saying here? What kind of documentation should be kept to distinguish the ingredients from a cooking class or a snack bar for staff members? Well, you would need to show, like, if you guys are doing purchasing, sometimes they take the life skills class on a trip to the grocery store, for instance, and they'll have grocery store receipts, something that indicates that it's for life skills. And, you know, if it was a snack bar for staff members, it would probably say snacks for a meeting or something like that. And that would not be reasonable and necessary, but it is on the other side. So make sure, if you guys don't have internal coding that would show that it was life skills versus a regular meeting, make sure that you know based on who the purchaser is. Some way you could prove out, oh yeah, that's when we bought the ingredients to make chocolate chip cookies with the life skills class. And it'll probably be by building too. So you got to have a way to dial it back down to prove that out. But that's excellent questions, you guys. And you know, maybe what we could do is build a Q&A on food that's a little bit more detailed to put out to you guys. You know, again, it's not us trying to be the bad guys over here, the bad cops. We don't want to have to come back to you and say, oh, that wasn't allowable. You guys owe us money. All right. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions? We got 3 minutes left. I want to give you back your 3 minutes. If you don't need them, that's fine too. But maybe what I'll do is just email this slide presentation out to you guys that were signed up and attended, and the other folks can grab the ones that get posted to the website. But great content today. I can't wait to have you guys help present. I just wanted to thank everybody again for coming today. And with that, I think we'll end it, and we'll see you guys next month for some more exciting communities of practice. In the meantime, thanks for everything that you guys do, and have a great week. Bye-bye.